Eating disorders, I think, stem from probably what a lot of people go through is like depression, sadness, and with my case, it was, I didn't know if my eating disorder was a case of me being depressed or if I was depressed because it was the case of what I was putting my body through.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to be a professional skateboarder?
My name is Anthony Scalamari. I was born and raised in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I'm 43 years old now, but I found skateboarding through not liking sports as much as a lot of other people because it was too structured. It was just someone, if I felt like I played soccer for like 11 years or like a long time, and if I felt like kicking the ball one way, the coach would tell you you're doing it like you should do it this way. It was like very unnatural for me. So I found skateboarding to be, I pick up this object and I get to go do what I want, where I want, how I want to do it. So it was all very self-motivated and self-disciplined, and I just was attracted to that. So I just skated by soccer practice and just kept going and fell in love with it and just never stopped and turned pro, and yeah, all my dreams came true from a skateboard. Met a lot of people, and sitting here with you guys doing this through skateboarding.
What age did you start skateboarding?
I was, when I first started skateboarding, I was probably like 10 or something like that, because my sisters always had boyfriends that skate. She was older and picked up a skateboard, but when I got my own and really started getting into it was probably around like 13, and that's when it just took off, when I just didn't want to associate with sports or anything like that anymore. When it was just like fully took over, I was like, I like doing this.
So that was like the age you decided that you wanted to like do that for like a living?
No, it was just something that I didn't want to ever stop doing. And from there, when you have something like just that, like just keeps you going every day and excited, like I didn't like school at all. My highlight of school was skating to school and then skating home after school, and so it helped me develop coping with a lot of other things. And without that skateboard, I was like, I want to do this forever. And turning pro was just the cherry on top.
Just the plus.
Yeah, and if you stick to anything with anything that you do, like you're gonna excel and become something that you never thought you could in the best way. If you don't look at it as like, I want to be this, because then that you just set yourself up for failure. So I don't ever think I did that. It was just a pure passion that I had and never let go, and will never let go. Me and my buddy went skating yesterday. I'm 43. It's a fountain of youth.
So what age did you go pro?
22. It is so long ago. 43-year-old brain. I think I was like 22 or 21. Such a fog. Around that age.
What advice would you give like male and females that are like going through the difficulties of eating disorders?
Honestly, like a lot of people say, like seek help and talk to people. I mean, talk to somebody that if you know they can understand what you're going through, but a lot of it is self-development. Like my approach was like I had to talk to myself before I could talk to anyone, because I was like, it was like a soccer coach. It was them telling me the tools how to do it when I'm like, oh, but I think it's better this way. So I think it would be like, look a lot into yourself and A, why am I doing it? B, if it's weight or if it's anything, are you doing it for yourself for reasons, or are you doing it for an image of someone else to accept you? So I think it's the best way to do it is to self-reflect and realize what you're doing it for, why you shouldn't be doing it. Balance the pro and the cons. Like, is it better that I do it or not do it? Just look inside yourself and want to be better, and that's the only way you can get better is to want it for yourself before others can want it for you. You know what I mean? It's easier for you to ask for help and not really like want to accept it when the real work comes from you. So I would say just look into to yourself. So when you do approach someone, you have the real honest, like core raw emotion of, I'm trying to get over this certain thing. So I would say self-reflect a little bit and then reach out to someone that you can really entrust to. And that would be me looking back the way I would have done it a little bit different.
Yeah.
Instead of just like bottling it up and not really, it was just like blaming a lot of other things and then like justifying why I did it or why I didn't do it and then just blame. You just got to look inside yourself and just want it. And that's the best way to go about it, I would say. Just look inside yourself and then reach out to others so you're really willing to take the advice someone's going to give you because you've already given yourself the advice. So you say something to yourself and then someone says it to you and you're like, okay, it clicked. Then you can just get it going.
So a lot of people think that eating disorders are just about losing or gaining weight. Do you agree with that?
No, I think eating disorders, I think, stem from probably what a lot of people go through is like depression, sadness, and with my case, it was, I didn't know if my eating disorder was a case of me being depressed or if I was depressed because it was the case of what I was putting my body through. So I think it's such a tough thing where you can't even, and that's just the brutality of an eating disorder. You just don't know why. It could be if someone's bigger than what they want to self-image is, it could be about losing weight. If someone's skinnier, it could, like, I don't know if that would be like excessive eating. I think it's all about getting back to that thing that I said was looking at yourself, like, what do I want for me, and not, I think it's other people's perspective is what a big issue of eating disorder is.
So what empowered you to speak out about eating disorders and your experiences with it?
Just bottled up for too long. I swallowed the pill, no pun intended, but I had to keep that pill down. And the only way I was going to let that like digest and get it out was to be vocal about it. And it took a long time. Like I'm, like I said, 43 now, and it took a lot of reflecting. Like it doesn't happen like, oh, you find out the problem and then it's easy. Like you got to counsel yourself, and it was bottled up for too long. And I have a son now, and it was me wanting to be better for other people. And I think that's what helped out like a lot, is like, it wasn't just for me. It was like, I'm going to be helping my friends out so they don't worry. So it was about like bettering myself and helping out other people around me. And that helped out a lot.
Yeah.
Being completely, because with the eating disorders, it's very selfish. So I think like when you take yourself out, I'm like, oh, if I'm going to do good, it's going to help people around me. My son's going to see like a healthier version of what I could be if I continued on this track. So just do it for yourself as much as you are doing it to better yourself for the people around you that you love and care for. Selfish is in the fact of, if anyone's watching this and going through it, eating disorders, whether it's like binging or purging or whatever, it's always alone. Like you're taking yourself out of like a party or a barbecue you're at or whatever setting you're at, and you're taking your own time and going and doing something fully on your own, going through whatever you're going through, and it's very just all about you in that moment. And then once you come out of that moment, you think you're adapting back into society. So selfish to me is just like, yeah, it's just the word itself. It's very selfish.
Were you ever put in a situation like during the time you were going through this eating disorder where like you were at a place and you didn't know necessarily what to do and how you got through that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like that's where that selfishness comes in, where it's just like being at a birthday party or a wedding or anything where there's so many triggers and stuff, and people don't know what you're going through because they don't know, and they're offering you stuff, and you're like, it's like panic, like internal panic. And that's basically anyone with an eating disorder. That's every time you leave your house. Back to the selfish. You're only like feeling good is when you are by yourself, because when you go in these events, you got all these thoughts of like, oh my gosh, like everything's out of place. It's not how I would do everything. So yeah, being in like a public setting, it was like 9 times out of 10, like you were just like crawling out of your skin, like, oh, this is just too much.
Yeah. And going off of that, do you think because you were a professional athlete that made it harder because of the amount of events you had to go to compared to other people might?
Well, I wasn't really going through it that much, because when I turned pro, and for like about 10 years of like being pro, it was never really an issue. It was because we would just eat fast food. We'd be living in a tour van, like touring, flying, like none of that stuff. So because you're so caught in the moment of loving life, I think the big part of me was like the descent of like kind of thinking my career was over, like what am I going to do next, and then just life depressions. I lost my mom, I lost my dad early, I lost friends, so a lot of things acclimated where I internalized all that stuff, and it turned into food related as an eating disorder, because mine was more of, in my just dark thinking, it was like you need food to survive, like, and I was very just like suicidal, not even suicidal, just like over life. Like I just didn't have the will to just do things anymore.
So it was more like a coping mechanism kind of?
Yeah, it was just more of like I gave up. And that was, I gave up in every way, and food was just like, it's going to keep you alive. And then I would binge, not even binge, I would just eat and then just purge, and then just kept doing that for every time. And then OCD kicked in, where if I didn't do that, then you get anxiety. I don't know if you've ever dealt with like obsessive compulsive disorder or anything like that, but that became a part of the whole problem too, because I would eat, purge, and then that became such a system where if I didn't do it, I felt like something was going to be off. So like I said, it's all a mental cyclone, and it's hard to shake, but it's worth it when you do.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Nyla Paniker, and I'm a senior here at Beverly, and I'm also a transfer student. So my struggles with eating disorders, they started when I was around 11 years old, after a major life event that happened to me. And it first started with binge eating, because I wasn't going to therapy. I didn't know how to cope with the things that was happening within my life, so I just turned to food. And it started very innocently, where I was slowly eating a little more candy after school, but then it progressed into just becoming out of control.
Yeah.
And I was at a point where I did not know how to control myself. I didn't know how to control how I was feeling. And I was at an age where I couldn't process the things that were happening to me in my life. So this was the only coping mechanism that I had.
Yeah.
And I thought it was just completely normal. So then a little bit after that, a couple years later, around high school, it kind of shifted a little bit. So I wasn't binge eating anymore. I started to become anorexic.
Yeah, like restrictive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So very restrictive. I was calorie counting all the time. And I think what happened for me was we had a swim unit at my old school, and I was a freshman, and I remember going there, and everybody's at the pool, and I was comparing myself to all these other girls.
Every single person.
And I was like, oh, I don't like how I look compared to this girl, or oh,
Yeah.
I don't like how I look compared to my other friend. And I had such a pivotal moment when I talked to one of my friends years later, and we were talking about that swim unit that we had, and I said, oh my gosh, like I was so jealous of you. And she was like, are you kidding me? She was like, I hated how I looked. I was so self-conscious. And she was saying that she was looking up to how I looked. And it's just crazy how eating disorders can trick your mind into seeing other things that aren't actually there.
Yeah.
And also making you put so much pressure on yourself.
Yeah.
So I think for me, the hardest part, and I'd like to know if you had these experiences as well, was getting out of it. I think that was the hardest part for me because when I just got fed up at a point where I was like, I can't be doing this anymore.
Yeah.
And how you were saying about birthday parties and things,
Yeah.
like that was something that I would experience. So I remember my friends wanted to get pizza one time, and I worked out for 8 miles until I went to go get pizza with them. And I remember something else where I wasn't really working out that day, and I went to go meet with my friends, and I brought like a salad, and they were getting burgers because I just felt that I didn't deserve it.
Yeah.
And I remember my mom got cookies one time, and I had like a binge episode because for me, when I was restricting a lot, it would lead to a binge.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
once a couple weeks or so.
Because your
every
body's
couple.
like, I need something, fill me up, and then you're already in that mental
Exactly.
case of like, yeah, it's.
So every couple of weeks I would have a binge episode. And I think it was really bad because I was eating like less than 1,200 calories a day.
Yeah.
So I was starving, and basically what happened was I ate a couple cookies, and I remember feeling like I just needed to punish myself for it.
Yeah.
Like I felt that I didn't deserve it, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna gain so much weight from this. So that's kind of where my story began.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you if being in the public eye as a professional athlete, did that ever alter your self-perception of yourself?
Absolutely, because when I grew up skateboarding, it was like the baggy pants era, so it was just like youth gone wild, everyone just doing their own thing. But as skateboarding progressed and got more in the public eye, there was a lot. You would just see like profiles of people like, oh, he's a skateboarder that looks good in like the tight jeans, and like the way companies would portray people, like. If you even have any self-doubt in your mind, you're always going to compare yourself. You don't need an eating disorder. I think that's just human nature to just compare yourself to someone else. Like, the grass is always greener. Like you were saying, like, you were always, like, jealous of all these other girls, and that one girl's like, oh, I'm so jealous of your body type or whatever. It's always your own worst critic, and that self-sabotage but in skateboarding, yeah, the older I got, the more I noticed it. But like I said, I didn't have like any issues with food or anything like for the first part, but I did notice, like, because I was a bigger skateboarder, I wasn't taking care of myself. I would be drinking beer and eating fast food every day, like, so I was bigger. I wasn't at my natural weight, but I noticed like, oh, I want to look like how that guy looks on, like, in his skateboard videos. He looks good because he's like thinner than I am. And then it didn't really take effect because I still liked having a good time, eating whatever I wanted and drinking beer and stuff like that. But it was definitely, as I reflect on it, there was a lot of people in skateboarding that, like, I don't want to mention their names, but me going through what I did, they were going through it long before I ever did. And I was like, I see a lot of what they were going through and what I had to, like, come out of myself. So it's definitely there. And nobody really talked about mental health, body image, anything like that, skateboarding, and anything. I guarantee if you're a football player or something like that, like, everyone has their issues, and it was just, yeah. And you're always going to compare yourself to someone else. And I've learned, and I want you guys to know this, if you're going to compare yourself to someone else, compare it to someone else that's like in a higher stature than you, and you're like, I want to become what they're doing and not how they look. I'm like, I want to be there someday, and like more of like a positive progression than a positive like perception or perspective.
Right, and I think comparing yourself to people on things that aren't physical attributes is what's actually going to benefit you as a person.
Yeah, because I'm a
Exactly.
skateboarder, and I look up to a lot of skateboarders because of like their talent and just like their style, the way they dress. Like, it's more inspiring than it is like what's the word? It's more inspiring than it is like letting yourself down because I don't look like that. It's like, oh, I want to inspire to do that. I want to work hard to do what I can on that. And yeah, just be you. It sounds corny, but I have a 13-year-old, and I just tell him to do whatever you want to do. As long as you're doing the right thing and it's making you a better person down the line, you're on the right track.
Okay, so this month is our self-acceptance month, and I wanted to know what things you do to help practice your own self-acceptance.
self-acceptance as like how?
Self-acceptance as
Like as who I am as a person?
who you are as a person,
Oh.
rather than just on a physical level.
Yeah.
What other ways do you accept yourself?
The more I accept myself and just I got a gold tooth. I just do it like it's almost I've gotten to this point in my life where I don't care what anybody else thinks, in the fact of if I'm as happy as I can be and that attracts people, I'm attracting the right people. So that's my acceptance to myself, is like, be who you are daily. I accept things are difficult at times, but the way I accept myself is like, all right, if I'm just naturally doing what I want to do and not really having comparisons or anything, and I'm like attracting all these good people in my life, where before I was discouraging them to be around me, that's how I found my self-acceptance, is just like, wow, all you got to do is be yourself and people will like me. Like it put every dark thing behind me and they like me.
So another thing that I wanted to ask you was, for me, overcoming my eating disorder, like, of course, like, there's triggers and things.
Yeah.
But for me, the thing that made me overcome it was just being fed up. Like,
Yeah.
I was just so tired
Yep.
of having to count everything and restrict myself from hanging out
Yep.
with my friends because I was scared of the consequences of
Yep.
that. So I wanted to ask, for you, what were some things that helped you overcome your disorder?
You literally just said it, and I was talking to my buddy about a lot of this stuff, because I've never really reflected on this besides the other podcast that I did. So this is like the first like real one-on-one I've had with people about this issue. But what was the question again? I'm sorry.
I was asking, what were some things that helped you overcome yours?
Oh yeah, like you were saying, my soul, like I say this like with all my heart, my soul was tired. Like my physical being, it was more of a chore of what I was trying to, this chore of the eating disorder was taking over my soul. It like people didn't know me anymore. Like I didn't know myself. So like you said, I was just like, F this. This is stupid. And that's that self-realization when like, now I want to help myself. And that's when I started reaching out to other people or kind of being more open. But my soul was tired. Like, and I wanted to live more and be a better person. That's when I was like, I don't want to be like this and that person. I want to be better. So it was almost good that you go through something so hard where you realize all the little things in life that you kind of took for granted, just the happiness of going for a walk and not thinking how many calories you were burning. You're just like, I just feel like doing what I want. It's just like that release of just letting that go and just tired and sick of it and wanting to move forward. So that just resonated with me really, really like deep.
So I wanted to ask how you were able to overcome some triggers, because for me with calorie counting, it was just something that became ingrained in my mind.
Yeah.
So even when I didn't want to think about it, I could naturally know how many calories each of the things I was eating had.
You were a genius in the worst way. You were a
Exactly.
mathematician in the worst way.
It was
I know.
terrible.
If you would have acclimated that to your school, you would have been like in honor rolls of what's the like highest math?
Math.
What's like the highest like?
I could have been, let's say AP Calc.
Imagine all that like wrong math that you knew. You could have been something. Sorry, I had to just jump in right there. But what were you saying?
So how were you able to overcome those triggers, and then how did that lead you to your recovery?
The triggers were more like we said, like us just being tired and my soul being tired and just being fed up with it led to like trigger foods were, I think, the best advice, because everyone's different, but I would just say if you have trigger foods, A, why, B, all right, is it A, it's a trigger food because it's bad, or is it B, it's a trigger food that could be good? So you got to find what you like. Like I said, it all comes down to you. Someone can't tell you your favorite ice cream is chocolate and you're like, no, I like this. It just comes down to you, like, why is this a trigger food? So I think it's different for everyone. But me, I was just like, because I would get thoughts like, I can't even remember the foods anymore. Like, we'll just say pizza, because I was always somewhere, like at a party or something, and I'm like, I can never have pizza again. Like, that's a trigger food. But then I was like, I'm Italian. I was born in an Italian household where we made homemade pizza. I'm like, that was something very nostalgic for me, and I turned it into something so evil. So I just found the foods I thought were triggering, try them again for the first time in your right mind and not in your left side of your brain telling you all the things why it's bad. Like, get in the right side of your mind and be like, all right, is this a bad thing? And just say it is a piece of pizza. Have a piece of pizza and that, or like a slice of it, and be like, enjoy it. See if you enjoy it. Like, really like have a connection, because food is a connection. You're supposed to enjoy it, like be around the people you love. So find your connections with the food that you like, or just face your triggers and the fear, and just one by one just be like, this is a trigger because of this, and just like maybe calculate why. Okay, then I don't really need this, or if I do want it, I don't have to have it in so much, like consume it to a level of like nobody would do that. But like, yeah, it's good to have stuff you like, and the more food you like, it's like the world is like full of great things, and you just need to find why it's your trigger food. That's the only thing, and everyone's different. Why is it your trigger food? And that's something you got to self-internalize, like to just really think about it. Like, why is that Kit Kat or whatever, like candy wrappers, or like, you just be like, why? Like, why can't I just enjoy one? And if you can't, it's not going to come like immediately. Like, you're not going to be like, oh, okay, that's why it is. You're going to have to learn to enjoy those things. And if you don't, like, okay, then I didn't really need that. Because when you're in like overeating and stuff, I guarantee you were eating stuff you didn't even care. You're probably eating your mom's chocolate, like, this is the worst stuff ever, but I don't care.
I didn't even want to eat it. You
exactly.
just had to eat it.
You just
it was
had
like
to.
a compulsion thing.
Yeah, exactly.
My trigger food, I think, was my grandma's food, because when I was a binge eater, I wouldn't really eat all day, so I could eat as much and binge on my grandma's food because I loved it. Then when I was restricting, if I knew I was going to my grandma's house and she was cooking, I would restrict so I could then allow myself to eat the food.
More,
so I think that was the hardest thing for me to eventually overcome and eat.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I had to process like eating throughout the day, and if I decided to make healthier choices that day, I allowed myself to do it. But I made sure that I was eating, and that helped me overcome those trigger foods.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people going through the disorder is they don't allow themselves to know how they feel after the food, besides going to guilt, like right away. Just eat something, just live. Have something, enjoy it, and just proceed about your day, and try and get out of your head of overthinking, like, oh my gosh, I did that or this or that. Just enjoy yourself more. And it's hard. It's hard. It's hard, but it's worth it. So just try your hardest. That's it. You might have slip-ups, but continue to try.
That points to my final question. How did the struggles that you faced surrounding your eating disorder, and anything else you want to talk about, how did that impact your family and your friends? Like, were they concerned? Did they know? Oh,
yeah, reflecting, because I lost a lot of friends on purpose just because I would just shun them away, like with my stuff, and I was the bad guy. And as I got older and like realized, like, oh man, I had a lot of people that cared for me, and I was like the bad guy because I would just push people away. It affected any relationship I had, it affected it in a negative way. Luckily, I have a story behind it. Like, I take accountability for it. So anyone I did like wrong in the past, like, they kind of know now that I'm more vocal about things, and they're like, yo, dude, and they'll call me name, like, you can bleep this, but like, yeah, you were a fucking asshole, like, you were a dick, we knew what was going on, like, you're the only one that was tricking yourself. So they pushed me away because they were just like, you weren't ready to help yourself. And whether you like it or not, it's going to affect every single person that loves you, point blank. And it's up to you to mend those relationships back, because your selfishness, like we said, it's gonna ruin a lot of things, but it takes a lot of hard work to overcome something and to reestablish trust and love with someone that you've been wrong for so long and didn't talk to so long. They're going to accept you, but they're going to want to see you do the work as much as you should be doing the work.
I'm realizing how crazy it is that despite us being different ages, different races, like, we grew up in totally different places. we've experienced like so many
We're-
similar experiences.
We're human beings.
Like it's crazy just
Yeah.
how similar these experiences can be, even though we had so many different factors that were influencing each
Yeah.
of us.
We're human beings. Like, every person is good-natured, and anyone that's a human is a human, and that's everyone. If you can just learn to accept everyone for who they are, or even for what they're going through, a helping hand or just a word of advice, sometimes nothing. Sometimes just looking them in the eye, letting them talk to you and open up, and it just comes from, I think, having good core values. And I think just talking to you guys, your family has instilled that. Whether you have trouble at home or stuff, but we have the core inside us to want to be the best person we can be, because that reflects onto other people and gets other people in good moods. And you are a reflection of yourself as much as you put out as you want someone else to be to you. So the better you are to someone, I believe that in turn, even if it's back not on you, like they might pay it for it. Like you may made their day and they just glow on someone else. So it's human nature, and everyone goes through things, but it's worth getting out of the rut, like when your life's on the line.
Yeah.
And everyone's life's on the line. Like life's hard, but it's worth it.
We would like to thank our generous sponsors and partners, Michael J. LeBeau, Norman Aid Peer Counselors, KBEV, and of course, we'd like to thank our listeners. Stay safe and make today well lived.